join us on stage? We'd also like to welcome a filmmaker exploring the intersections of humanity and technology, director of Humans in the Loop, Aranya Sahay. A very warm welcome. Keep that applause going for the visionary behind the hauntingly beautiful Undercurrent, a filmmaker who knows exactly how to navigate the depths of storytelling. Let's welcome Christo Tomy. And to moderate what's going to be a masterclass, we have someone who has worn many hats: actor, producer, aviator, activist, and a true student of the craft. Let's welcome to the stage Gulpanag.
Thank you, Radhika, for that fantastic introduction. Half my job's done. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be back here and on this absolutely fantastic panel with three directors who have pushed the envelope, not once, but multiple times, and are definitive of how India is telling its stories. While Radhika did give an introduction, I want to very quickly take you through the three very, very talented filmmakers we have on stage with me today. Kanu Behl is the director of Titli, Agra, and more recently Dispatch. He's made films, and as films are now being called, content. Known for their raw, unsparing gaze at family, masculinity, and social structures. His cinema consistently challenges comfort zones while remaining rooted in emotional truth. Aranya Sahay, he's the director of Humans in the Loop, as Radhika just told us. His work sits at the intersection of ethics, labor, and the future of work with deep social inquiry and scientific storytelling. And he's going to tell us just exactly how that works. Last but not least, Christo Tomy. Christo's use of personal conflict to reflect broader social moral tensions, the kind of investigative work that his documentary series Curry and Cyanide did, and of course his approach to filmmaking, which leaves viewers with complexity of what they have watched rather than resolution. Resolution is perhaps an easier way of storytelling, that you finish watching and you feel like, I know what happened. But what's, to me, very exciting as a viewer is to keep thinking about it rather than seek resolution. So my first question to all three of you, and I'll begin with Christo. All three of you have made films that are not traditionally easy or conventional by any means. How do you think about winning viewers today? Is it about accessibility? Is it about honesty? Does one pander to what the viewer wants? How do you go about thinking of the viewer when you write?
Thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be on this panel with these amazing filmmakers and Gul. So thank you so much. Very happy to be here. I think the scenario has changed immensely over the last few years with the coming of the OTT platforms and COVID, and the abundance of reels now. Even while I'm watching films in the night, like watching TV, I have one hand on the phone, and the moment the film gets a little boring or lacking, my hands move on to this YouTube reels or Instagram reels. So I think that is a pandemic that is affecting all of us. And as a filmmaker, I'm very much aware to it. I'm very much conscious of this thing that is happening all over the world. So it has become much more challenging for us now to kind of produce cinema that grabs the attention of the viewer. And what is also challenging, I felt, is that post-COVID, it was a bit difficult to bring people into the theaters, because everybody know that in 30 days time, in 45 days time, whatever the film is going to be available in your home. And you can watch it from the comfort of your home without, with just a subscription fees and not wasting like 1,000 rupees on the ticket and popcorn and all this stuff. So how do you ensure that people are so excited that they come into the theaters to watch the film knowing that this film is going to be available in your home in 30 days? And also, while they're watching the film, how do you keep them hooked? And today's audience has watched all the shows, all the films that is happening around the world. They have seen the Money Heist, they have seen Squid Game, they have seen all these international shows. And then when they're watching your film, they are comparing it to that level. They are, they would rather say that I would rather watch a Money Heist or a Squid Game than watch this. So it has become a lot challenging for the filmmakers today to come up with stories and tell it in such a way that is engaging and gripping. But I think every decade, every time in history offers a certain kind of challenge to filmmakers, and it only helps us to make our craft better and devise a craft in such a way that we want to tell the stories that we want to say, we want to tell the stuff that we want to say, but tell it in a way that the audience is engrossed in it, audience are captivated by it. So that is something that I'm very much aware. Also, while coming out of the film school, we are coming with very idealistic views of what the world is and what cinema is, what theater is, what this industry is. But over a period of like 8 years of trying to make my first film, getting the finances, getting it to the theaters, getting it to the platform, I've realized that you have to be open to the sensibilities of the audience. Or it's finally the audience who would watch the film, who would react to it, and it is for them you are making the film. And if they do not want to come out and watch the film, whether in theaters or any platform, then what is the point of making a film in itself? So that is a bigger journey that I've learned over the years, that finally it's audience who is the god, and you have to kind of find a way to make your stuff exciting for them. At the same time, not lose your vision, not lose your voice, so that you tell what you want to say.
Thanks, Christo. I think I do want to come back to trying to make my film for 8 years, but in some time. I'd like you to come in on this, please.
Thank you, Christo, and thank you, Gul, for that wonderful question. Thank you to the ABP family for having me and represent Humans in the Loop. I think talking about my experience with Humans in the Loop, broadly to answer your question, I always and I will always approach this from the perspective that you give the audience something new every time, something distinct every time, but you make it familiar. So with Humans in the Loop, the film was about an Adivasi woman who begins interacting with AI in Jharkhand, which some might call as a high concept idea, right? How do you usko dhalein kaise? How do you make it into something which is more palatable? So the story really in the film is about a mother and a daughter. The emotional storytelling between a mother and a daughter makes the backbone of that kind of storytelling. And on that backbone of storytelling, on that string of storytelling, I can hang a lot of things that I want to say about tech, about philosophy, about, scientific storytelling. So, and I take from filmmakers like Denis Villeneuve, I love Arrival, I take from, say, an Interstellar, or even a Kubrick, where they've done an emotional storytelling, but they've had things to say on that. So they've made it palatable. So more and more, that's what I seek to do with my films.
Thank you. Kanu, with your body of work, with the sheer quantum of experience you've had, could you also layer your response to the, how do you write with keeping in mind the viewers, to the changing viewer? I mean, Christo touched upon it and said that today your viewer has access to not just what he or she is watching in terms of what's coming out of India, but the very best of the world. How then have you seen this journey of the viewer from, back in the day when you were working with Dibakar and on LSD, and today? I mean, it's been a journey. Can you also incorporate that, the changing demands, the nuances of the viewer itself, and how you cater to that and take into account how to write and make films with that perspective now?
So I have a very simple answer for this, which is that you don't look at it. You can't look at it. I think...
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. You don't think about the viewer when you write?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. For me, I am the first audience myself. if I'm interested in it, I have enough faith that there are enough people out there that are interested in it. So I'm first of all my own audience, right? Because as you said, the audience is changing all the time. And especially now we live in times where things are changing so fast that I'd rather spend my time looking inwards as that centered, organic, anchored audience myself, rather than looking out and trying to find, oh, what do people want to see? So I always treat myself as the first audience and say, okay, what am I interested in talking about, in the sense that what would I feel like listening to? What is not being spoken out enough about? And so I see a space there where I'm going like, why is no one talking about this? So this is personal to me. So which brings me to the other half of what my check becomes for whether I should do a film or not, which is, for me, the more personal you get, the more universal you are. So the best way to reach the largest audience possibly is to get to the most personal, universal layer within you. So that becomes one, where I say, okay, this is starting with a personal urge that I have or a personal experience, but it has a larger meta, it has a larger connection, it has a larger relevance in the world that we are in today. And the moment I make that connection between the personal and the universal, I go like, okay, there's a film here, possible. So that's one. And the other is, you are the audience yourself. If you want to see it, then everybody wants to see it.
I think that's very poignant. You break it down to the most universal, emotional layer that I think is relatable for everyone. I think that's very interesting. Now, how does algorithm fit into all of this? In an age where platforms reward looks, instant gratification, not perhaps slow burn, and also this now making content which is attention proof, that you can be scrolling on your devices and yet be engaged in what you're watching. How do you protect nuance and the complexity without actually losing the visibility of the big picture as a storyteller? I'll let you take that first, because it's a continuation of what you just spoke about.
I think, thankfully, we are still a few years away from AGI. Everyone keeps talking about AI, but AGI is not here yet. So we'll know. The next big breakthrough really is AGI. And
do you want to talk a little bit about AGI?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not an expert and I don't know much. I try to keep myself up to date, but AGI is artificial general intelligence as opposed to AI, which is probably the rudimentary version of where this world can eventually take us. So I think once AGI enters algorithms, then hopefully art has more of a chance, because hopefully AGI might be slightly smarter.
And I think it'll be easier for AGI to help you find audiences that think like you.
Possibly.
And which is what the hope is. That's very interesting. How about you, Aranya? How do you look at this?
I don't.
Okay.
And I don't want to. Really, because the thing is that a lot of times we think that what does an audience want, and you reduce it and you minimize it to an algorithm, and it's not like that. You know, it is a lot of times.
Disregard the algorithm; it's a reality.
No, you can't disregard it altogether. But a lot of the greatest pieces, and I'm not talking about art, a lot of the greatest pieces, even on OTT, a Squid Game or anything, was actually first coming from a personal storytelling, from some things that somebody wanted to write.
Which is what Kanu also said. I mean, it has to be personally vested.
Yeah.
I guess also just to add to it, most of the successes that we see on OTT are in spite of the system, in spite of the data rather than because of the data, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Squid Game is a great example. Or even say a Scam 1992. All of these are examples where people wanted to set out to tell a story themselves, and then the algorithm took them on. So it's not the other way around. Always.
So I guess what the algorithm is doing is it can, so far, that's why I was saying AGI, so far it can only tell you what has worked, and hence it will take you towards more of what has worked. Whereas what really sets where we are going is in spite of the algorithm.
Absolutely,
in that sense.
Yeah. Very well said. So what is your experience in this? I mean, and how was your experience with Undercurrent? Keeping this perspective of making a film, writing a story, and did you think about how the audiences would view this, how the algorithm would view this?
While making Undercurrent, I had complete freedom, creative freedom in that respect. Of course, I did think about how would the audience receive this film, because it's basically about two women waiting in a flooded house, waiting for the floods to kind of subside, for the funeral to happen. And this is not a very commercial or a massy idea as such. And everybody involved in the film right from the beginning, including the producers, had a fear that how would the audience, or the mass audience for that matter, receive this film. And going by the previous trends, this film should not do well in the theaters, or should not do well on the platform. But I think for me, while making the film, I wanted to make it in an engaging way, in an interesting way. And I approach this film as an emotional thriller, so to say, so that it will keep the audience hooked. It will keep the audience asking questions like, what will happen next? I did not want it to be indulgent. I didn't want it to be a film such that only a few people would enjoy. So I was very much aware of the fact, right from when I was writing the script to editing to doing the music, I want to hook the audience. I want to be them part of this experience. I want to keep them thrilled through this experience. I don't want them to feel bored through this experience. But yeah, just to...
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Sorry, you were saying something?
No, I something to take from Christo and actually just explore it a little more. That, you know, a lot of times we think the algorithm question actually boils down to the question is that, are you catering to an audience? Does the audience know what they want? A lot of times the audience does not know what they want.
Absolutely.
Right?
Most of us don't know.
Yeah,
We are being fed.
Yeah, and we are only doing approximations. And if you're doing approximations, then might as well tell a story that you in your gut feels correctly about, right?
Yeah, I mean, who would have thunk that Nolan would do Batman the way he did?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because if you had asked the algorithm what Nolan's version of Batman should be, they would have probably referenced to the Jack Nicholson version of
Yeah, very
you know,
true.
and that'd be more of the same.
Which is what's interesting. That means we're thinking out of the box and not shutting the box. So I have one, I mean, I really want to talk about the challenges of distribution for independent filmmakers. But before we come to that, and I want all three of you to very quickly tell me the answer to, you know, a question. And there's a point and a B point. All of you have made films that are, I won't call them issue-based, but address issues. Where do you draw the line between making a point about the issue that you're talking about and letting the story breathe? That's A. And B is, how do you leave an emotional doorway open for the audience when the audience is watching something which you are telling as a storyteller and they disagree with it? How do you allow them to build empathy? So one, how do you make an issue-based film, or how do you tackle an issue without it become pontificating? And B, how do you deal with the audience? I mean, what kind of an emotional doorway of empathy do you leave open when you're telling them something which may not be palatable? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, तो सबसे पहले तो didactic तो हो ही नहीं सकता. हम लोग ad film तो बना नहीं रहे. We are at the end of the day trying to tell you a story. So I think the best way to tell that story is emotionally, and emotional investment and empathy. You have to build some sort of empathy for the character. So yeah, you can't. I think you can't take that position of saying, at least I don't. I make an honest attempt to not try to be on a pedestal and say, I'm just 45. So you know, I'm also experiencing life. I'm growing. I'm also understanding the world. And if that's my truth, how can I take a position where I'm in my film saying, I know this is it, now I'll tell you. So automatically, if you're looking inwards, your position is, okay, this is what I'm talking about. मुझे इसके बारे में इतना ही पता है. ये सवाल है, इतने से थोड़े एक दो जवाब हैं.
बाकी open to interpretation.
Right. बाकी सवाल हैं, अब आप तय कीजिए. That's the kind of approach. And to the second part is, I feel like the moment, I feel like I don't want to take that burden. Most of my characters are really difficult to empathize with. So I don't try to take that burden of, oh, I have to make you like him or her. The point is, आप craft-wise एक दो चीजें डाल देते हो craftily, which help. But my own belief is personally that the moment the audience is in the position of the protagonist that you have picked. They are already in that position. वो हैं वहाँ पर.
Understood. Aranya, your take on these 2 points quickly.
I think, especially with Humans in the Loop, the idea was about, talking about AI. AI is very, very extremely looked upon as dystopic. We're moving towards a scenario where more and more jobs, and especially when I started writing, those were the only conversations that were there. But as I was working on this film, I realized that there is a scope to reclaim AI from, say, the tech companies or just the government, and for centering humanity and having humanity collective control over these things that are going to affect all of us. Now, the easier route would have been to completely go and, just paint algorithms and paint AI in a negative light. But I didn't do that. I went in a more, I wouldn't say positive, but I went in a more hopeful scenario where humanity can reclaim. So how I did that, I think I just front and centered the humanity. I front and centered the mother-daughter story. A mother who's grown away from her daughter, and she feels, and an Adivasi mother, right? Who feels like there is life around everything. She feels like there's life in the rocks, there's life in this. But so when she looks at an algorithm, she feels like maybe there's life in this also. So once she's growing away from her daughter, she kind of grows closer to AI, right? And in that interaction, the challenge then became, and the conflict then became, does sort of, will this algorithm ever see through an Adivasi indigenous perspective? So in that sense, I think I made sure that I front and centered the mother-daughter story. And that's how...
And that was the human connect.
That was the human, you front and center humanity. And I think that should be the way of storytelling in that.
Christo, your thoughts on this, right? When you address an issue in a film, how do you prevent it from becoming the bigger idea and being didactic? And of course, how do you address the fact that you want to be able to instill empathy despite the disagreement that the viewer may have with your perspective?
Yeah, so, I mean, usually I don't start my film or the writing process with the idea that I want to tell a specific, talk about a specific issue or talk about a specific viewpoint. I would rather get excited by the story that I'm saying or the characters or a specific situation or something like that. Now in Undercurrent, for example, it was about a woman who had an illicit affair where her husband is dying. So this is not a very acceptable thought, especially for a male, like a patriarchal society like Kerala. And for a mass audience, they would not kind of identify with this character. But the idea was that to tell the story in such a way that the audience kind of roots for this character. The audience may not agree with what she's doing, but they would feel an emotional resonance with her, saying that, oh, I do not agree with what she's doing, but I understand why she's doing what she's doing. So that is my job, I think, as a storyteller, to kind of, if I'm taking out characters that are difficult for the audience to kind of resonate with, then to kind of make them understand them, to kind of make them resonate with them, even though they don't agree. So that is what I always try to do with my films. And then again, a lot of times I let the story kind of breathe and take a form in itself to kind of tell me what it's trying to tell me. I am not kind of trying to put a POV onto the film or kind of put a statement at the end of the film saying that, okay, this is what I want to say. Right. I want the emotion to breathe. I want the audience to feel that emotion. And through those emotions, if they get something great, but I want them to rather feel that emotion more than anything else.
Lack of resolution. I mean, so, I want to move away from emotions and non-tangible things to what is really tangible, the business of cinema and the challenges of independent filmmakers and distribution. There are incredible films being made out there, but we don't get to see them. And OTTs were supposed to fix that. Do you want to talk about your journey with Agra? And then I'd like, both Aranya and Christo to come in on that. And I want the audience to think about this, because this is what I want to be the lasting thought, that there are great filmmakers out there who are pushing the envelope, who are opening the box, but distribution is a real challenge, and in some cases it's not. So I'd like you to go first for this, please, with your Agra story.
Yeah, so it was a 8-year-long journey. From the day I started writing the film to the day it came out in the theaters. It was a 100-screen release, but there was not a single PVR or a Cinepolis. So effectively, the 100 screens that I got were unreachable and were, even for the people who were interested in the film, they couldn't go and watch it. So I decided to speak up about it, and fortunately, it got picked up by the press. And beyond that, it has led to so far 120 independent filmmakers coming together. We are on the cusp of forming a group now, an independent filmmakers body now.
I think that deserves a very, very big hand. Affirmative action when faced with a challenge rather than just saying, ye to aise hi hota hai.
Yeah, so that the happy part of the process was that the film, whatever happened to the film, but it sort of became like a diving board for all of us to start the process of coming together, and so that's happening. But yeah, the challenges are there.
Would you also like to touch upon, I mean, I should have mentioned this, theatrically and getting through to the OTT ecosystem as well. And Aranya, I want you to come last in this because I know you have a slightly different take on this, and Christo spoke about 8 years to make his film as well. So would you like to just add a little bit about how the access of distribution is not just with theaters and theatrical releases, but beyond that perhaps?
Yeah, so I mean that's been the slow. We all talk about Hindi cinema being in decline, right? But we never really truly address why it's in decline, and the reason and it's similar reasons with Hollywood. The mid-budget film has completely gone out of vogue. So the smaller budget films have been asked to fuck off, if I can say that. They've been long, 5 or 6 years ago, they were said, okay, you are not part of this ecosystem. You are not allowed here. Go find some other alternative, which was supposed to be the OTTs. So the smaller film exited first. The mid-budget film then couldn't find its feet because suddenly the cinemas were too expensive, and one single visit meant too much to spend. So the event film came in. But it's a dying system. We are seeing that system fail now because the event film, you cannot feed the audience only on gulab jamuns. They need nutrition. They need the palate has to be full. So if you're only going to give them gulab jamuns, they can only have 1 or 2. And that's what we are seeing.
They'll get diabetic very quickly.
Sorry?
They'll get diabetic
very
quickly.
They'll get diabetic really quickly. So that's what is happening now in the theatrical space, which is, I mean, in India now, the model somehow in the OTT space, they are trying to recreate the exact same failing model that they are seeing in the theatrical space. But somehow they feel like idhar kaam karega.
Yeah, kaam karega. Christo, do you want to come in on this? We're running out of time, but I do want to hear Aranya's take also on this. So your journey, the challenges of distribution, both theatrical and OTT.
So with Undercurrent, like when I was trying to make the film, I wanted to finish the film and then take it to the festivals and go to the markets and things like that. But strange to say that once I completed the film, my film did not get through to any of the major festivals and did not make it even to the festival in Kerala, for that matter. So, but then luckily we had a good theatrical release, and it had a great release across the world, not just in India, and it did really great numbers for a female-oriented film. So I think I felt during my journey that whatever you want to do, whatever the kind of film that you want to do, you have to be also kind of realistic to understand, okay, this is the market that this film would thrive in. There is no point in me saying that, I want to make a specific kind of film and it should do well in the theaters, or I want to do a specific kind of film and it to do well in the festival circuit. You have to be aware of what, specific market wants, and you have to kind of prepare yourself for that. So that was the journey I think I had, and I also realized for me the biggest joy is seeing a film in the theaters and seeing the reactions of the people. So the first day when my film was released, I remember still the joy of seeing that Book My Show getting orange and then becoming red, and I don't think anything else can replace that. So I am very clear in my journey forward that those are the kind of films that I want to make to be widely seen from the audience, widely seen by the masses, not just in Kerala but everywhere around the world. But again, like as a filmmaker, I want to tell the stories that I want to say, keep my vision intact. But again, have a wider accessibility factor there. And also, distribution for my film was very specific because even my producers were afraid of how to kind of position it. Because again, like I told you, it's a female-centric film. It talks about funeral and death, and it's about mourning and.
I mean, why female-centric films should be an issue is something for is subject for a different panel. But I do want to talk about that some other time. But yes, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, because getting funding for such a film also was very difficult. And then everybody was scared how it would do well in the theaters because everybody thought, okay, this film was for the OTTs. But then it really did great numbers in the theaters. And before the film released, we would send it to TV channels and such, and a lot of people hesitated in buying it. But after the film got released, and major television channel picked it up, and then they sent a message later to my producer saying this film has done great numbers, better than even the so-called traditional commercial comedy films. So I think it's about, for me personally, the journey is about connecting with the audience, and that is where I have got the most reward from.
Thank you for that. We're out of time, but definitely would love to hear your bits on the distributional challenges or lack of.
No, challenge is there. There's no difference. It's a very challenging job to get your film out there, especially as a small film, as an independent film. What we did was, we premiered the film in Mumbai Film Festival in 2024. And for 1 or 2 months, you just have to, I just ended up pulling everybody's sleeve key. What can we do? How can this film reach a certain way? Can this premiere at a bigger international film festival? Will that affect? When none of that happened, I realized I can't waste and I can't let the destiny of my film be determined by this European, American film festival space, neither by people who are, who don't understand this kind of a film yet, right? So we started to do a lot. We did 2 screenings every week for the next 1 year. Right? So I screened it at India International Center, Bangalore International Center, National Film Archive of India. And India is still structured in a way where a small filmmaker can go and, do this campaign for a year for very little money.
You fought for your film.
Yes, I mean, as does everybody, but we ran it like a political campaign in the sense, if you don't have money, you have time, right? You give your film a year. And because of those screenings, at every screening, I would invite, say, 40 journalists. 10 would turn up, 2 would write about the film. But those 2 writing about the film gave me enough momentum to release the film in September 2025. There, we didn't have a large release. We had literally 1 screen in Mumbai, right? Because that's the kind of money we had to pay upfront. But what started to happen was, because of that momentum for a year, that show started going houseful. And because of that, PVR then got involved.
Added shows.
Yeah, and added shows. So we scaled up from 1 show in Mumbai to 100 shows across 15 cities. And that gave us the momentum to eventually come on Netflix, and through the help of my executive producer, of course, who's Kiran Rao.
Kiran, of course. That's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big hand for this panel? Christo, Aranya, and Kanu. And it's so heartening to see in an age where we chase likes and numbers that there are people who are fighting it out to tell the stories that mean something and resonate for them. Thank you so much for being such a fantastic audience. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a wonderful, what an enriching conversation this has been. It certainly is not easy to find a distinct voice as a filmmaker in the times of algorithms in AI, but aren't we grateful that they have found their voice? And what AI certainly can't replace is their perseverance and their imagination. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a huge round of applause. I request you to please remain on stage as I invite Kapil Batra.